Cool. One of the unexpected elements of writing a book was this, that I sort of had that, the story was set in stone, and I would be, drawing out that story and trying to explain it. But the more I got into writing the book, the more insights were revealed, and I went deeper and deeper. And even some current events, when I'm looking at what's going on through the lens of what I was writing about, it actually really transformed what I was writing. And Paul, that's sort of a little bit what you're talking about, isn't it? Like you've got life events going on, but you're looking at it through the lens of this book that you're wanting to put out there. And I think that my experience was to accept that and just go, okay, this is part of the creative process. And I find when you're in that, because your radar's up for what you're writing about, you see bits and pieces and you draw those into your story. So I think it's we like to think there's some sort of template for doing it, but there's an element of craftsmanship to it as you dive into it as well. Has that been your experience with that?
Yeah, look, for me, it was always difficult to get a starting point. Like, because it's a timeline of several years, you could start with today and then go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Or you could start with the beginning and come forward, or some combination of that.
Yeah.
And I didn't really have a definitive point. It always bugged me that I didn't really have a definitive point to open the book with. And now I've got something that I can just go, I can weave that whichever way I want.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. And I think that well, let me ask Alan, Alan and Darren, so you're both also dealing with the, where do we start? How do we start? How do we bring it in with the real punch as well? Is that right?
I reckon I've got an idea for where I'm going to start it in my mind.
Yep.
Which is the story of effectively that first decent trip that I managed to get away from my business for 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And catch up within half a day, be fully caught up when I got back.
Yeah.
I think that's a good starting point for talking about getting free from the day-to-day operations of your business.
So let me ask you this. Where in that story, because you've got, okay, I went away for 5 weeks, the business ran, I came back, it hadn't fallen apart. Where's the most interesting point to start in that story?
The catching up within a few hours of getting back.
Right.
Being up to date, fully up to date with your business within 2 hours of being away for 5 weeks.
Okay. Paul, where would you start with that story? And Darren, I'm going to ask you the same question.
I'm not sure that grabs me as an opener to hold.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Any ideas where you would start?
I had a bit of a lag, but I was going to say, you could. It is as if I've never been away.
Yeah. So now here's the thing. Every story needs a bit of tension. Remember we talked about obstacle and intention?
Yep.
Right? So I think every story needs an obstacle, and every story needs a hero intention. Now, in that story, you coming back to the work and it being okay is almost kind of the fairy tale ending.
Yep.
So
not the beginning.
If I'm thinking about that, now you could start with that same spot, but you position it differently. For example, you could say, every other time I walked into my office after a 1 week break, all shit broke down. The shit hit the fan big time. And I was walking in absolutely dreading what I was about to find. Right? So now, more interesting, Paul? Darren, right? Has that got your interest a little bit more? Right? And so, because the obstacle is that you're about to walk into something that could be just horrible. The intention is that you want to try and get over it. But building that tension, the tension between the two before you go there, is a really effective device. So you could start with that sort of approach, and you can say, as I opened the door, Margaret screamed at me, "Alan, you're back!"
Yep.
Right? And now we all want to know what happened. We want to know if that's a good scream or a bad scream.
Yep.
And now what you say is something like, "So let me tell you where this all started." Bam. And we go back to the beginning.
Yep.
And so now I'm a real fan of taking that moment of tension because it grabs our interest. And I think I've mentioned, I'm really inspired by the John Bertram book, Born to Win, because it's a massive book. It's like 600 pages long. And it's very much a first I was born, then I did this, then I did that, then I won the race, but he started it in the middle of the most intense moment of the America's Cup race. And I was I was absolutely hooked, right? And I've seen a lot of books, and I was given a couple of books last week. I was given 4 books, and I'll get them for you. By fellow authors who are just like us. And this fellow here, who seems a really, really cool fellow, and he's got a book called The Outcome Generation. It looks like all of our books, right? It's, 200 pages, 175 pages, it's that sort of thing. And the subtitle is How a New Generation of Technology Vendors Thrives Through True Customer Success. And he's obviously an IT guy, very, very intelligent guy, well articulated. It's all the usual. It's exactly like our books should be. But and he's got diagrams and he's got breakout bits and all that sort of stuff. But I skimmed through this entire book, and while I was on the plane to somewhere, I was looking for a story that would just drag me into the book, and there wasn't a single one that I could see. It was, he starts it with, there's been an explosion of interest in customer success, and it's blah, 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 and it's blah. You know what I mean? The old attitude. What is customer success? The old attitude versus the new attitude. The diagram. And I'm like, okay, but I want to know why the doctor is in surgery and the IT breaks down and the life's on. That's what I want to know. Like, I want to know what's the outcome. And everywhere it's just data, 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 data. And I'm sure it's absolutely brilliant. Data. It just doesn't grab me, right? And so a lot of these are cool. This is a pretty cool one, I thought. Mission Possible, Finance Action Hero. So she's kind of built her idea around, finance is like an action hero. And her, it's actually, I think it's pretty cool sort of cover. That actually sort of grabs my attention. This girl's doing really well, marketing to mums. Now, I haven't looked through this for stories, to be honest. I haven't really got there. But my sense is if you can start your story, and so Daz and Alan in particular, but Paul, you're going to get to this. It's about bringing people into that moment when everything's about to go wrong or could go wrong, or that really tense moment. So in your story, Alan, we could bring that in as you're about to walk in, but we could also, you could tell a story about when you were out on the trail and you got a half a message and you weren't sure whether it was a disaster or a triumph. But all night you woke. Now, I don't know whether this happened or not, but it's a great illustration. And I'll bet you don't get away for 5 weeks without at some point thinking, I wonder if it's all gone to pieces.
Yeah, yep.
Right? And I think and you describe that like I sat bolt upright, I just couldn't sleep. It was the end of month and I knew that this would be happening and that would be happening. It's critical that whatever. And talk about the consequences. but diving us straight into the middle of that action, it has to grab people in so that they're 2 or 3 pages into the book before they even realise it.
Yep.
Is that making sense?
Does. Yep.
So based on that, where would you start in your story?
I've got 2 minds now. One is at that walk-in, but the other is the sheer panic of getting ready to leave.
Right.
And the expectation of what you're going to come back to.
Yeah. Yep. Daz, when we think about you, what's a story that illustrates, because Daz's book's about lessons my father taught me. Is there a story? So what was the beginning, what was your opening phrase that you wanted to use?
Oh, I never thought I was lucky until when.
Right. And is there a tense moment or story where you could really talk about that?
Well, the story I was going to put in, it sounds a bit boring now that by comparison. So,
Like every story can be interesting if it's told in the right way.
yeah, no, I understand that. It's just that, like, I was 14 years old when I went to my first investment seminar.
Yep.
And it was at the local gentleman's club in Wollongong. And, I just said to my parents, "Oh, look, I think I need to go to this thing." And they're like, "Yeah, no worries."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Okay, yeah." And then when I got there, the guy's like, "Do you earn any money?" I'm like, "No." And he's like, "Well, this is a negative gearing seminar. You're going to be wasting your time."
Right.
And I thought, well, no, I don't think I'm going to be wasting my time. I want to learn. So
Yeah. So, you could illustrate, like you could go back to that, but have you ever met anyone in your life and their life's falling apart and you think, gosh, if only you'd learned what I learned at 14? Have you ever had that kind of conversation?
Yeah, I probably could get
Right.
something like that, yeah.
So I had that conversation with someone this week, where, like all of us in our business, it's, you never think your business is in the shape you want it to be in. It's never there. And I think, I was feeling that this week, and I met with a friend of mine who has quite a big business, but he's got some problems with a partner, and the partner's done the dirty on him, left him with massive debt, and he's going to have to put it in liquidation. And, that's a real, well, geez, my little problems in my business, nothing compared to that. And that's a real moment of humanity where I can sort of go, all right, there's a sliding doors moment. So, I would even suggest that you could, bring it in where you've met an old friend who is in dire straits and you're talking about them, and you say, that always reminds me of when I went to an investment seminar when I was 14, and I'm so pleased I know what I know back then. And you can kind of bring that story around. Is that helpful?
Yeah, yeah.
And I guess I want to. So, Paul, are you getting some ideas on how to start your story?
Yeah, look, I think I've pieced mine together. I sort of literally went to the doctor on a Saturday afternoon just feeling a fraction unwell.
Yep.
And they took one look at me, put me straight in a wheelchair and sent me straight in the hospital next door.
Right.
But I'd been, yeah, so it gives me a starting point of being able to, but then the same hospital, we had the birth of our kids there. And when my third daughter was born, best part of 20 years ago now, she was born in the middle of a thunderstorm and the power went out. But not only did the power go out in the hospital, the backup went out. And then the backup of the backup went out. So all we could do was watch TV was when she was born. It was like scary as all shit.
Yeah.
So I can weave those elements into that start of a story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what I'd encourage you to do is just get the timeline a little bit out. So, for example, to me, if I'm thinking about your story, recently, the moment that I imagine everything starting to swirl in my head is when you're actually in the wheelchair being wheeled to part of the hospital and you're thinking, what the hell's going on? That's where I'd start it. So that story could start with right now I'm sitting in a wheelchair watching the fluorescent tubes go by and wondering, how the hell did I get here? Today started like any other day, and now here I am being rushed into emergency whatever. How did I get here? And if you start with that, there's a little tension in that, because they want to know, how did you get here too? Right? And then you can backtrack and say, I did this and that and the other. And then you can actually tie it, you do basically do a man in a hole kind of thing, and bring it back to there. I'd actually use if you can draw a direct line to when your daughter was born, then do that. But what I want you to do is start at that moment of peak, like just craziness, like when you were just thinking, what the hell is going on here? And describe, and here's the thing, I want you to describe what it felt like. So, when I said, I imagine, the fluorescent tubes going by, I want you to paint a real picture, as in, the wheelchair felt old and it was creaking as we were, screaming down this hall. I could hear the two nurses behind me talking. The tubes were going by. We crashed through this door. I want you to paint a really vivid picture. And now obviously you were in it, so you can recall some of that, but it's okay to embellish that a little bit and bring it to life. Not too much, like I don't think we need to go, into every minute detail, but what we're aiming for is to hit that button in people's hearts and minds where they relate. Right? Where they go, I know what it's like to panic before going on holidays. I know what it's like, to be in a wheelchair. I know what it's like when you meet someone and you think, oh my gosh, if only you'd gone here with me, that you wouldn't be dealing with this right now. So we're trying to get people to relive it. So it's got to be enough detail and emotion that it grabs them, not so much detail that it bores them. But my experience is most business guys and girls just don't dig deep enough. So they'll say, I was in a wheelchair on my way to so-and-so, and that's very factual, but we want to dig into what's going on a little bit and describe it in a bit of detail. Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, that's good, because the only thing I was worrying about is whether the bloody power went out as I was getting wheeled in the hospital.
Right. So, and I really should have been worrying about A, B, and C.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Right. And so I did a gig, a speaking gig down last week in Melbourne at quite a big association, the Australian Payroll Association, and there were 8 speakers on the main stage, and only 3 of them out of the 8 caught anyone's attention, like basically had people staying in the room. And it was really because, and I was one of the 3, because not only did people not leave, people came from outside and there was standing room only to see what the hell was going on in this room, because I'd turned them into a rock band. And so I had 300 people sitting, and then another couple of hundred people came in and stood around the back of the auditorium. But the thing is, I sat in on a couple of those other ones, and all they did was give data. Now, the 3 that were really engaging and that were, I think, successful, every one of us kicked off with a story. And the guy who was particularly good put little stories in little throughout the whole thing. So I guess what I want you to think about is that the story, I want there to be tension, but it doesn't have to be like life-threatening tension. It can be tension that in small stories, So like Alan, no one was going to die with you stressing about work while you're away. But it can feel pretty bloody stressful when you wake up in the middle of the night and think, oh shit, I forgot to tell Margaret to do such and such, but you can bring that to life by describing waking up in a sweat. You can, however we describe it. So those little stories, and it doesn't need to be big. Like, it doesn't need to be, I saved 100 people, Superman type story. Because this guy who did probably the best of the day, who was Andrew Griffith, he was just such a fantastic storyteller. Really great. So I want to encourage you to just really work on that story, that opening, because I think that what most people do when they get a book, when they get a new book, is they open it up to the first page and they go, okay, entertain me, people sort of look at it, and if you don't get straight into a story, like this girl's an incredible, amazing girl, right? But she starts off with, when I was interviewed on a podcast recently, and it's like, I'd rather be like, as I sat in the wheelchair being wheeled to emergency, I was desperately worried that the power would cut off. Now I'm into it. Is that making sense?
Yep, all good.
So, and these stories are going to be translated when you speak about the book a little bit later on. Darren, is that helping with your little conundrum?
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
I've actually helped a guy get out of debt, so that's a good start.
Great. Okay, what I want to direct you guys to is this module. Can you guys all see that shared screen there?
Yep.
So this is module 7, which is bringing your book, to life, making your book real. And this is what I want you guys to look at, because even though you haven't written, much, if at all, right, I seriously want you to start thinking about your book title and your book cover, right? And there's a couple of, in lesson 7, there's, and I'm going to go through this just briefly, but there's a couple of quite short videos and making a tagline, how to do the header, and how to actually do the cover. And the reason I want you to do that, and I've got a few links there. So lesson 7 is what I want you guys looking at over the next fortnight. This is each of these would be no more than 6 or 7 minutes, I think. I really don't think they're very long at all. I purposely keep them pretty short. But the reason I want you to do that is that what I've found is when you're writing, it's kind of abstract. It's kind of like, okay, I'm writing a book and I'm doing some stories and I've got a little structure and I'm doing all that sort of stuff. The second you've got an actual book design, title and cover, it kicks you into another gear. And so I actually want you to do that not when the book's finished. I want you to do it now, right? Because it doesn't take much time. And the title and the tagline are really, really important as you're writing, because it positions your niche and it positions your book. And we want to continually keep focused on what that is. Is that making sense?
Yeah, and that's what I did with when I wrote Ready, Set, Fire.
Yeah.
That whole book is structured around getting ready, getting set up, and preparing to manage fire maintenance contractors. So that created my 3 parts in that book.
Right. So even coming up with the title really helped you structure it.
Yep.
Yeah. So most people kind of go, what? Wait, what? Why are we doing a cover now? Why are we getting into that now? But I've found that the earlier you get into it, the cover. Now, it might, you might go through many revisions, and I know Chris Morrison is probably onto his 5th or 6th book title, but it's due to be printed soon, so he's going to have to land on one of them. But the thing is, it really informs the way you write. So I thought I'd take you through that a little bit. So, Darren, have you done any work on a cover and a title? And Paul, same for you?
Not the cover, but definitely on the name of the books.
Yep. Paul, what about you? Have you done any work on the name and the?
Yeah, no, my name I think is pretty set.
Yeah.
This is a bitch. What to do before it kicks in the head.
Yeah.
I'm pretty much settled on that. I haven't done a cover design or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, so let me share with you how we approach that. Hang on, let me just get the right one out. So I really like using the and Paul, you'll be very familiar with this. I really like using the AIDA principle to think about your book title. So in advertising, it's kind of an old-ish principle now, but it just works really well. Now, the AIDA principle says, let me just get this there. So can you guys all see that screen?
Yep.
Okay, so the whole thing with the AIDA principle is first we get attention, then we generate interest, then we create desire, and then we ask them to take action. And the way that I see this relating to books is this. The title of your book is really about your target audience. The book title, I think, it's about getting attention from the right people. Right, so I'm a huge fan of having your target audience in the title. So, for example, Paul, you mentioned business as a bitch. Well, then that's clearly about business. So we've got the attention of business people, right? And we generate interest because of the tagline. And I think the goal of the tagline is really to get them interested and intrigue them and sort of outline your promise, right? So if we take, for example, if I just, let me get this in here. So if I get Katrina McCarter's book, Marketing to Mums, like absolutely clear who her audience is. Anyone who is marketing to mums. The tagline is how to sell more to Australia's most powerful consumer. Right? So she's got that great title and the great tagline. That's her target audience. This is giving a little intrigue because it's how to sell more to Australia's most powerful consumer. She's kind of implying that she really knows, who that powerful consumer is. This one is a small company, big business, right? So she's saying if you're a small company and you want to do business with big business, this is for you. So she's got that in the title. Tagline is how to get your small business ready to do business with big business, right? So it's not super clever, it's not super whatever, but it's really clear who that audience is. Here's another one, great one, Annette Simmons, Whoever Tells the Best Story Wins. Great book, tagline, how to use your own stories to communicate with power and impact. Right? So if you consider yourself a storyteller, this is for you. Oh, here's a really good one. Ready, Set, Fire. But that's great. It gets, great headline, gets interest, drags you in. So the way I want to think about doing that is to generate this desire. So if we're generating desire, what we've got to do, that cover is really an ad. It's got to instill that desire to continue. So there's got to be an element of letting them into the intrigue, right? A lot of book writers tend to make it, my story of such and such. Well, unless you're Shane Warne or someone intriguing, people don't, it doesn't mean anything. And then the action, of course, is for them to buy the book, you know. We want to give them a reason why they should write the book. And really that front cover is all about getting them to turn over to the back, right? The back is really about creating this desire and giving them a reason to buy the book. So, you know, I think that back needs to be quite powerful, quite a strong way to increase desire. And then there's a little bit about you, the author. So I actually think the book title is actually a bit more complex than we think. So if we think about that, the way I like to think about it is exactly the same way that advertising people write ads. Now, you know, some of you may know that I've spent, you know, the first 20 years of my working life in the ad industry. And although I was never a copywriter or a designer, I got to see the way that they actually created ads. And what they would do is they would just get a sheet with a lot of different squares. And let's say they were, you know, selling screen cleaner, you know, this cleans your LCD screens, right? They'd come up with an idea and they'd put a, you know, a headline. They'd put a tagline, and then what they would do is they would move on and immediately create as many derivations of that as they could, right? So if we went, business is a bitch, what is it? What's the rest of it, Paul?
And the tagline is what to do before it kicks you in the head.
Yep. What to do before it kicks you, right, in the head. Right, so now, great start, like actually a really strong start, but now what I want you to do is just take, for example, just the title. What else could we do? Business is a bitch. What's an alternative to that? And you just come up with, so you could do 3 or 4 different alternatives and then do derivations of that. So, Alan, when you think of business as a bitch, what's an alternative to that?
Business sucks.
Right. Business sucks. Right, Darren, any ideas?
Business kicked me in the guts.
Business kicked me in the guts. Right? And you know, we go, okay, business is a bitch. We could just go, bitch. That could be the title, you know. We could go in any sort of, sing out some ideas, no matter how, whether they're a direct line or a really distant line. What are some other ideas?
Constant bitching.
Yep. Right, and we could swap it around. Business kicked me in the head. And if we're going to do that, we could do head-kicking business.
I mean, we're stuck with the bitch bit, but it could also be a bastard.
Right.
You wanted to go to that aspect of it.
You know, you could do the, you know, the current thing of expletive.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Business. Fuck business.
Yep.
Right?
Or business fucking sucks.
Screw this. Yeah, business fucking sucks. Right? But you can see that we're just free floating ideas, right? None of them are great, but what you'll do is, like, what will happen is ad agency people would do page after page after page, and the creative director would come along and he or she would go, hey, this is great. Okay. And then they take that idea and then they do another page all based around that idea. Or they go, all right, I like this, business kicked me. How can we put that with, this, right? And the more you do this, what it does is it frees you up from your original idea. And what I want you to do is I want you to do as many of these as you can. And it's kind of fun because you get into the, we're starting to get some good ideas there, and we've only just been doing it for 2 minutes. But what we do is I think you could do a whole page of just headlines, of the business title, the book title. And then you could do a whole page of taglines and then try them with each other. What we do is we put them into the Facebook group and we get all the authors in the group to give us feedback on. And if you look back on some of the other authors that came earlier on in the year, they completely flipped their titles. Like they started with one thing and people went, oh, that doesn't grab me, but I love, they've gone, oh, here, your title that you start with, but this is awesome. And, I put up some examples and people were going, oh, yeah, this is the one. This gets like 5 ticks. And I'm thinking, oh, this one's really clever, but everyone else is going like that. So this group of probably nearly 40 people in there now are really open to giving you feedback on those. And it's incredibly valuable because it's like market research. And the whole idea is that this is it's kind of going to represent your brand, what you stand for. So we want it to be something that's really, that really gels, that really gets attention. And hopefully, this is why that's such a great title, because, marketing to mums is so clear. We want that clarity, and it's kind of clever because it's got that alliteration going on. So spend a little time on that, and you'll actually, as you do it, you'll go, oh yeah, there was a time when I thought, fuck business. I'm walking away. Oh, see, there's another idea.
Yeah.
Walking away from business. Right? Because I bet a lot of people have felt, or from my business. Right? As I say, not perfect, but that could spark some other ideas that get you down this road. Okay, so let's quickly do, just based on that little exercise that we showed there, what are your insights? So Alan, what are your insights about that process?
I think of not being stuck with the name that you've got in your head at the moment.
Yeah.
I've got a name that we came up with early on for this next book, but there's variations and stuff, and I still haven't got a proper tagline for it. So
yeah,
definitely using this to develop a tagline that will work.
And what you want to do is you want to show everyone in the office, show your wife, you'll show your kids. I'll give you an honest answer.
Yep.
You may need to discount their answer by 50%, but What about you, Daz? What's your insight there?
Well, I have put it onto the Facebook group before, and actually my thing was always my dad's the greatest.
Yeah.
And then it was like how to grow, survive, and thrive in business, and things Dad had taught me and stuff. And then in the end, it basically has come around to be like grow, survive, thrive.
It's flipped.
Things Dad taught us, yeah. So it's kind of done a backflip, like you say,
yeah. Yeah, that's great. Paul, what's your little insights in that?
I think it's the title and tagline and not giving a promise. What I was thinking is not giving a promise.
Yeah, so it's not. Yeah, so you don't feel like you've kind of got down to that the corner of the center of what you're wanting to communicate.
No, because the book's more about what to do to prevent, or how to avoid, or what to do if you're
Right.
in trouble. It's not clear in my title what that needs to do.
And I think that's the thing what I've noticed about anyone who wants to write is you need that initial idea, like, business is a bitch or whatever it is. And that's a great starting point, but you can, through this process, get much more sophisticated, and because what we want in this, actually in any book, whether it's a book to generate business or to help your business or just to help people, our role here is to make it stupidly simple what this book's all about. To make it really, really clear, because, they've got enough, when you walk into a bookstore and you see, rows and rows and rows of books, what you want is something that's just so clear that they go, I need to know that. That's what I need to know. So that's kind of the aim of the book cover. And bear in mind, the book cover's meant to get you from there to flip it over at the back, and we'll work on the blurb at a later point.
I think for me, for example, my dad's the greatest, obviously, because I'm writing about my dad. It was kind of sentimental for me, but it really means nothing else to anyone else, So it's kind of like, it's a bit like, I think, Action Coach teach it in the way of, if you put someone's business name on a business, it excites two people, the person and their mum, basically.
Yeah, that's right. The only people who care about your logo is you and your mum. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a great analogy, Daz, because I think we get a little bit caught up in our book cover. The first book I ever wrote was called The Bride's Guide, which was it was a book about how to choose your perfect wedding photographer. And my coach at the time, he said, no one gives a shit about The Bride's Guide. It's got to be how to choose your perfect wedding photographer. And of course, it was quite successful, because if you're a bride and you're choosing photographers, you see a book that goes how to choose your perfect wedding photographer, you bloody well want that book. So it's and I'm like, no, that's not a clever enough title. And the guy who was coaching me said, fuck clever. You want the right people to pick it up, don't you? And actually, as I look at it in retrospect, it actually is quite clever. How to choose your perfect wedding photographer is quite a clever title. So, and that was very how-to. And none of your books, I think, are really how-tos in that strict sense. We want to tap into that title that really taps into, that first story we spoke about, and how we think about the emotions and the what you're going through when you're in the wheelchair, when we're about to go on holidays, when you meet that person, who's in dire straits. It's that moment. It's that moment where you can turn it all on, where you can flip it, and you can go one way or the other. That's kind of the crux of what you want to be expressing in your book title. So your challenge this week or this fortnight is to take the book title you've got and then do as many derivations as you can. So I reckon on the site there, I've just got an example here, and really just get a page and in fact, I think I've actually got a worksheet for you that's all ruled up for you, an A4 that you can just download and print. So this is the exercise that I really want you guys working on at the moment. And for everyone who's listening to this on the recording, this is for you too. I want you to be doing these book titles, and I want you to be posting them in, because you really, really need the feedback on it from other people. And to start this with the not being too committed to the title, but then starting to get really creative about where those titles take you, and then are they really getting to the crux of what the book's all about? Are they really getting the attention of the right people? And are they talking about what I will be talking about? So that's your mission, should you choose to accept it for this week.
Sounds like a fair deal.
It sounds like a fair deal. So it just gets you out of writing another chapter or two, mate. That's all. It just gets you to procrastinate the writing for a little bit. That's all.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks.
All right, let's wrap it up. What I want you to do is just take a moment, write down on your bit of paper, or just think about what are the top 2 insights out of today's session, specifically around storytelling and kicking off your book, and around creating your book title and your tagline. So what are your top 2 insights? All right, who's going to go first? Alan, you've got that eagle-eye look in your eye.
It's an eagle-eye look.
There it is.
I think the way of getting the tagline, I wasn't sure where to start with the tagline and how to generate a tagline. So that's actually the main one.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So I think, and just get your page out.
Yep.
And just do it with your tagline.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because that's the one that really needs refinement, because there is nothing for that. So
yeah. Excellent. Daz, what about you, mate? What are your insights?
Title related to opening story is what I've written down.
Yep. Excellent.
Like I say, it has to tie in with what you're trying to teach and what you want your target audience to learn.
Yeah.
Rather than catch cry for your own thing.
Yeah, and I think the thing too is that what we really want to tie that into is, in a way, it's the problem that we're attempting to solve with this book as well. Because I think, in our businesses, we, rather than tell people about us, we want to tell them how we solve their problem. A book is no different. We've got to straight up front tell people how we're going to help them solve the problem. Again, talking about marketing to mums, she's basically saying she's going to teach you how to sell more to Australia's most powerful consumer, right? She's, lots of nice insight. And that's like, if you are marketing to mums, you're going to want to read this. This is going to be like, but if you're not marketing to mums, you won't even pick it up, which is absolutely exactly what we want. Paul, what about you, mate?
Who is that written by?
That was Katrina McCarter. Lovely lady from Melbourne, I think. That's Katrina. She's just been over to France doing a speaking tour. So she's got this great, she created this book called 9 Mistakes to Avoid When Marketing to Mums. And so this is, so basically she turns up somewhere and she gives them the book, she gives them the brochure, and it just goes through 9 mistakes of, mistake 1 is that, mistake 2 is that. And guess what this is really similar to? Her slide deck when she presents. So she just went over, she spoke in New York and she spoke in France. She even had this brochure translated into French. So
translated into France, was it?
Into France, yeah, absolutely. And translated into New Yorkness, something. I don't know. Paul, what are your top 2 insights, mate?
I think the number 1 insight is just clarifying that a story doesn't need to go from A to Z.
Yeah.
It can start at, H and
go all around. Yeah,
whatever, and come back again. So getting comfortable with that.
Yeah.
I tried doing it before and I wasn't comfortable with it, but now I think I am.
Yeah.
And really my tagline has to be how it's going to help them, and just attaching on some emotional level to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that ad agency approach, because most people think ad agency people just have, wake up with this blindingly brilliant, idea and headline. But no, it's a process. And it's a pretty heavy duty process as well. So I think I like that process for books as well.
Yep.
Excellent. All right, that's your mission. Book titles, taglines. And in that module, there's a bit about designing covers, but I don't want to go too far into that. I really want you guys all, because we've got a bunch of people who are at the same sort of level, as you guys are at. And for those who are watching the recording who have done this already, it's really worth, as you go through the book, re-looking at your title and thinking, is that still relevant to where I'm going? So it's really worth checking in on that on many, many different moments.
Cool.
All right. Look at that. We're on time. The blokes did it on time. So rare.
That could be a title of your next book.
Yeah. The blokes can stay on time when they need to.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, guys.
We asked, is Alan's first book, is that Ready, Set, Fire? Is that a how-to sort of book to start with?
Yeah.
As in how to set fire to something? Is that what your deviant mind is doing?
God knows, not with 2 decades as the penalty these days now. No, but I assume that's kind of like the how-to guide of how to set up Ready to
manage it.
Fire. Yeah.
Yep.
And so the next book is about trying to teach people how to get away from their business. Then is that what you're?
That's right. Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, one of the things Alan's done really well is set up his business so that he can move out of it, but not completely, because he doesn't want to, ditch it. He just wants to have time to do other things, like pamper his wife.
Behind every great man, there's an
annoying wife.
A brilliant wife, you meant to say. Brilliant wife.
I'm going
to end this before you get into trouble.
I appreciate that, Brett.
All right, guys. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Please jump on the Facebook. Throw those ideas in there because the feedback is excellent when we get it from everybody. We've got a few people travelling at the moment, but I'm pretty sure Scotty will be checking in from Bali. He's on a beach somewhere, the bum. When you're listening to this, Scott.
Yeah.
All right, guys. See you in a fortnight.
Thank you. Gotcha.
Bye.